Okay.
I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock, and we'll start off by roll call. If I could start at my left.
Hi, I'm Kobe Okezi, and I am from Todd Beamer High School.
Hiroshiato, Director District 5.
Jeffrey McAnalloy, Director District 1.
Claire Wilson, Director District 2.
Carol Gregory, Director District 4.
Tammy Campbell, Superintendent.
What? Student representative of the board, Olivia Chong.
Thank you. I'm glad you know who you are tonight, Olivia. If you could all rise, please, and join me as Todd Beamer High School JROTC presents the colors.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Face. Forward. Colors. Forward. March.
You may be seated. First order of business, I'd like to ask for approval of the agenda for tonight.
I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of March 27th, 2018 as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'd like to make a motion or a change on the agenda, and that is under adjournment 6.1, inaccurately listed as board meeting assessment. That was last month, so we will not be doing that this month. So it's just removing 6.1. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Second of all, I'm looking for required approval of required approvals agenda for tonight.
I move that the Board of Education approve the required approvals agenda of March 27th, 2018 as submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next thing we got on our agenda, and probably the reason why most of you are here, is good news announcements. We're going to do a little quick switch. Dr. Oli is supposed to be down in front, and so I think I'm going to go down in front. And then if Director McAnally, can you do my pieces, and life will be good. Thank you.
The Puget Sound Educational Service District has selected Federal Way High School student Madeline Rice to receive an Outstanding Achievement Award in the Regional High School Art Show for her photo, Peony. Artwork is judged on creativity, composition, and technique, and is open to students enrolled in grades 9 through 12. Madeline, please come forward and be recognized, along with her administrators. We are proud of your dedication to the arts, which supports Strategic Plan Goal 4, content area competence, mastery of all subjects. Congratulations, Madeline. The Thomas Jefferson High School speech and debate team recently performed exceptionally well in the state and national qualifying tournaments, including the team placing second in state. Would the following scholars please come forward to be recognized? Hakeem Shibley, second in state for impromptu, first in national qualifiers for oratory, and will attend nationals in oratory. Alan Benjamin Tugod, first in national qualifiers in humorous interpretation, and will attend nationals in humorous. Henry Ojabaru, first in state dramatic interpretation. Andrew Tang, first in state expository speaking. Grace Scuderi, president of the Thomas Jefferson High School speech and debate team, who is here to represent the team for placing second in state. Coaches and administrators are welcome to come forward at this time and join the team. This is in direct support of Goal 3 of the strategic plan, active learners, engaged, empowered, critical thinkers. Congratulations to everyone.
Go Raiders.
We would like to take a moment to recognize and thank the Kiwanis Club of Federal Way for its continued partnership over the years. At this time, I'd like to call forward President of the Kiwanis Club for Federal Way, Dennis Hulsey, and other Kiwanis members that are here tonight. They will now present a check for $18,330 to the district that goes towards support of school activities. Kiwanis is a global organization of volunteers dedicated to changing the world one child and one community at a time. We appreciate your steadfast service within our community and all you do to support our student scholars.
Linda Persson is the president. Yes, I'm the past president. Linda Persson.
Linda Purser?
Linda Persson.
Persha. Okay. Linda Persha is the current
And
president.
Susan Honda.
Okay. As part of the partnership, Federal Way Public Schools commits to donating 25% of the annual amount received to the Kiwanis Club of the Federal Way to Bridging a Gap program. Would Valerie Danforth, president of the BAG program, please come forward so the district can present a check for $4,582? Oh, got it. Thank you.
Okay, now.
So as part of the partnership, Federal Way Public Schools commits to donating 25% of the amount received from the Kiwanis Club of Federal Way to the Bridging a Gap program. Would Valerie Danforth, president of the BAG program, please come forward so the district can present a check of $4,582. The vote. The BAG program was established in 2014 to provide food for students in Federal Way schools who might not otherwise have a reliable source of nutrition over the weekends and during the school breaks. The program continues to grow and expand thanks to many in the community partners and the strong partnership with the school district. Schools can't do it alone, and we appreciate your support. Strategic Plan Goal 2, Whole Child, Thriving, Confident, Responsible Individuals. Thank you all for the support of our scholars.
Now you'll probably notice all of the trophies or awards over here on the table. That is the number of teachers that we have had certified this year who have earned the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards certification in 2017. This is a very hard task and very impressive to think that every year we've got about this many teachers that are taking this extra step to be proficient in their career. So we'll congratulate the whole group, and then we'll go through each teacher individually. National Board Certification is an advanced certification program designed to recognize outstanding teachers who meet high and rigorous standards that accomplished teachers should know and be able to do. With us this evening to stand in recognition of our newest National Board Certified teachers is Francine Oishi. Is she here? Ah, perfect. District's Program Coordinator of Teacher Induction, Mentoring, and Support, and some of the National Board Facilitators. Lori Harrison, is she here? And Christine Harancic, right? I'll practice that one. I'll be reading the teacher's name and certification area. Megan Ersvold, Early Childhood Generalist. Congratulations. Yalina Alexander, Early and Middle Childhood, English as a New Language. Ashley Andrews, Early and Middle Childhood, Literacy, Reading, Language Arts. Lucinda Bryant, Early Childhood through Young Adult School Counseling. Rosanna Castro, Childhood through Young Adulthood Exceptional Needs Specialist. Beatrice Cords, Early Childhood through Young Adult Exceptional Needs Specialist. Oh, I missed one. Thank you. Emily Bray, Adolescence and Young Adulthood English Language Arts. I got Beatrice, right? Yeah. Right.
Can start doubling up, maybe?
Teresa Eiler, Early Adolescent through Young Adult World Languages. Tina Gilmore, Early Adolescence through Young Adulthood English as a New Language. Brian Hamilton, Adolescence and Young Adulthood Social Studies History. Lori Hartman, Early Childhood through Young Adulthood Exceptional Needs Specialist. Alexandria Hayes, Early and Middle Childhood Music. Miley Jensen, Early Childhood through Young Adulthood Exceptional Needs Specialist. Lori Knickerberg, Young Adult Exceptional Needs Specialist. Ann Cormos, Adolescence and Young Adult Social Studies History. Jennifer Marquez Shell, Early Adolescence Mathematics. Denise McLean, Adolescence and Young Adult Social Studies History. Jessica Pack, Early and Middle Childhood Literacy, Reading, Language Arts. Tara Pearson, Adolescence and Young Adult Social Studies History. Kate Weber, early childhood generalist, sorry. Leanne Proctor, early adolescence through young adulthood, English as a new language. Kyler Randall, adolescence and young adulthood, social studies history. Ben Shelton, early adolescence through young adulthood, physical education. Maura Seward, early and middle childhood literacy, reading, language arts. Mariko Sparks, early and middle childhood, English as a new language. Annie Wolfron, early and middle childhood literacy, reading, language arts. Jamie Tate, middle childhood generalist. Amber Thompson, early adolescence, English language arts. Wendy Van Skyhawk, early childhood through young adulthood, exceptional needs specialist. National Board certified teachers have successfully demonstrated exemplary teaching knowledge, skills, and practices. The National Board candidacy process is demanding and has numerous benefits to students as teachers become even more self-reflective about their practice and increase subject area knowledge. Congratulations to our National Board certified teachers and your dedication to our scholars' bright futures. Thank you.
Before they sit, what career do you know where people get masters, they get their bachelors, they may even get their doctors, then they get certifications? No other career do you see people doing all of this beyond graduation. And I think that's one of the things that's underappreciated about the preparation of our teachers. Thank you for all of your hard work. I know our scholars are going to benefit from your expertise. You're our sheroes and heroes. Thank you.
Okay. A Federal Way High School scholar has been named an Act 6 scholar. Selected through a rigorous 3-month competition among more than 1,000 applicants, 106 diverse students were selected from across the country as leaders with a commitment to serving their community and have been awarded a full tuition, full need scholarship. Will Juan Daniel Rodriguez please come forward to be recognized? Juan will be taking his leadership skills to Whitworth University. Juan shared how attending Federal Way High School gave him a voice through clubs such as Fuerte, a civic engagement club that allows scholars to become involved in the community and advocate for change. This is in recognition of Goal 5 of our strategic plan, Persistence to Graduation. Congratulations to Juan.
Just so you know, that's a full ride scholarship to a private school in Spokane. Full ride.
Right, so I'm going to ask Kobe and Olivia to head on down to the dais. We're going to do Because of You awards.
The scholars on the advisory to the superintendent created the Because of You award process, which allows scholars in grades 3 through 12 to nominate any educator in the Federal Way School District to be recognized by the school board. This allows educators who go above and beyond in supporting their scholars and/or positively impacting their community to receive the recognition that they deserve. Every month, all of the nominations are reviewed by the advisory to the superintendent officers, and the most impactful nominees are chosen to be given this award. We will now acknowledge our Because of You award recipients. When the students who nominated the recipients' names are read, they are welcome to come forward to stand in the front.
We would now like to call Natalia Hadishel, third grade teacher at Woodmont K through 8, forward to be recognized. She was nominated by Sophia Ramirez. Sophia shared that Miss Hadishel pushes her to do her best and strive for success. Sophia states she makes learning fun so it feels easy, but at the same time she's very firm on how the material she wants us to learn. Although Ms. Hadishel is very strict, Sophia expressed how wonderful a teacher she is by encouraging her and saying she knows Sophia is capable. Because of you, Sophia feels confident in her learning. We would now like to call Ryan Westoff, PE specialist at Sherwood Forest Elementary School, forward to be recognized. He was nominated by Alex Dotenhofer and Allison Cleaver. I don't know. Alex shared that there is no better PE teacher in all of the schools than Mr. Wessenhoff, he stated. He is super nice, he's talented, he's he's adorable. He's cool, he's awesome, apparently a great dad. He's great, Allison says. She enjoys playing games and having fun while learning. She also shared that she cannot wait to do Pacers. Good job doing that. I hated Pacers. These scholars agree. Because of you, they are healthier. That is all. Thank you very much.
All right, next up is the Legislative Liaison Update, Director Gregory.
I do not have a report.
Okay. Yeah, I want to let you know, please feel free to get up and leave. If you've got homework, or if you're a National Board teacher, you might just want to put your feet up today. So we will let you leave, and we will not feel badly at all. If you want to stay, that's cool too, but thanks for being so kind and respectful and sitting. Okay. Quarterly reports, and on that is the City Council report, and I will just say that Deputy Mayor Honda and I have been in conversation. We have a meeting planned next Thursday to discuss our gathering between full council and full board, to talk a little bit about a vision and a mission and work that we might do. So after we meet to come up with the just some initial thinking, we'll share that. We're thinking it'll be a couple hours, and we will just come together and do some kinds of a process so we can come up with some thinking, common thinking. So that's really where we're at with the update on that City Council partnership. Do we have any public comment forms tonight? Okay, no public comment. How about school reports? Let's start with our scholar representative to my left, Kobe.
So, I cannot begin to express how proud I am with our scholars. For the last few weeks, they have shown immense courage, resolve, and passion in the face of adversity. Students from all over Federal Way middle schools, and high schools walked out in protest of increasing gun violence in schools especially. In an act of solidarity, our district stood steadfast and walked tall with the students from all over the country. And to those who decided to walk out because their views differed from those who participated, I commend you as well. Though I may not myself believe in your viewpoints, it took courage and conviction to stand by your beliefs, and I am proud of you just as the same. In other news, I would like to give a huge congratulations first to Sacagawea Middle School in raising over $13,000 in this year's cookie drive for their school. Secondly, congratulations to Thomas Jefferson High School for what I've been told was a very successful food drive, which ended this Friday. Your love and dedication to your community is greatly appreciated. And lastly, Woodmont Elementary in raising money for a charity that sends new shoes to impoverished parts of Ethiopia, proving that no matter your age or where you live, as long as you have the heart and the will to make it happen, you can make the world a better place. Scholars for the last 2 weeks have been preparing for student-led conferences, gathering materials and works for their portfolios, and turning in any last-minute work to change their grade before their parents get to see them during their conference. Seniors, myself included, have been finishing their 13-year plan, a portfolio which shows that your scholar has a plan for after high school life, whether it be college or heading directly to the workforce. Some examples of work that goes into the 13-year plan may be an application for a 4-year community or technical college, a copy of military enlistment forms, should that be your scholar's choice, and or a job application and resume. If you have seniors attending high school, please ensure that they have already or are in the immediate process of turning this in, as it is a great graduation requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Kobe. Olivia.
This week, a lot of scholars within our schools were writing about the walk that happened on March 14th at 10 a.m. At Federal Way High School, a good turnout of scholars walked out in front of the school to show empowerment. They all held hands together in a circle with some classmates they weren't even close to. It was amazing to see and witness many scholars paying their respects, with some even going out of their way to speak on the topic at hand. Even though the walkout was only 17 minutes, it took a while to get back in class because admin had to write passes to all the scholars who walked out. At Sacagawea Middle School, girls from the We Act Club organized the walkout with rules for safety and the purpose. At all the schools who had the scholars participating in the walkout, there were administrators or teachers making sure our scholars were safe when paying their respects. In many of the high schools, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors are registrating for classes for next year. Many of our counselors have their work cut out for them in the following weeks and the weeks before next year's school. Wow, that's repetitive. Sorry. Next year's year approaches. Many scholars have respect for our counselors and acknowledge what they do for us. Even though schedules are sometimes not up to par with some scholars, many have learned to understand how big their workload is and become very patient. Last week, many scholars used their voice and actions to pay their respect and show empowerment.
Thank you very much. All right. Superintendent comments.
We're excited about our STEM night that's going to happen tomorrow night. I want to encourage anyone watching tonight, parents, bring scholars. We will have universities, we will have higher ed, some of our partners in the STEM fields like Microsoft, Boeing, smaller firms there to talk to scholars about what careers in the field of science, technology, engineering, and math might be like. We will also have the trades there to talk a little bit about what it means to participate in the trades with a focus on STEM. In short, here's what we want to do. We want to make sure that scholars can see themselves in these careers and that they know what it's like. We want to tear down the wall of mystery so they understand how to navigate their spaces outside of K-12 to these career opportunities, because we know that most of these jobs, if not all, have what we would call living wages that can really afford them the kind of pursuits where they can accomplish their dreams. So STEM night, tomorrow night, Todd Beamer, 4 to 8, is that the right time? So please come. What time?
5 to 8.
6 to 8. 4 o'clock if you want to get there early. I will be there. And board members, you have your shirts, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We just finished student-led conferences, and we're tallying to see what our participation is. I think one of the most important things beyond just the numbers is, did we have the kind of quality conversations that scholars were leading about standards, where they're talking about what they knew, what they need for success, and how their parents might be able to partner with the school in closing those gaps. And so we're looking at that data, but I want to continue to press our team to define what an effective student-led conference looks like and how is that playing out across all of our schools. Parents, one of the most important things you can do is get on Parent View and monitor your scholars' performance. Engage in conversation with your with your student's teacher, asking questions about how you can help. We do not have the Parent View sign-up that we want, which is 100%. In some schools, we're down to 60 or 70%. That means 30% of our parents are not looking on Parent View to check grades. And so this is an important effort. We're really doubling down on this so that we can close what I call that knowing gap. You can't fix it if you don't know it, and you can't know it if you're not going online monitoring your scholars' performance. Lastly, the team and I the leadership team and I had the Pacific Education Group come in and do some training for the team on racial equity, and it really was powerful in light of some of the recent data that specifically talks about African American males and how no matter the income bracket that they're in, that often they don't see themselves crossing the finish line at rates that other groups do. And this was important for us to start to think about. We want every single scholar to be successful, and if we have to do some specific learning to figure out how to close gaps for some of those scholars who don't, we intend to do our due diligence. So that's about all that I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Gregory, board comment?
Thank you. I just want to talk a little bit about what's happened in the past week, actually the past month. And the whole question of student voice. When our superintendent came to us with such passion about student voice, it didn't ring really true to me, and I wasn't sure how we could really make that powerful. And I think what we've seen here at the board is that it is a very powerful tool, and thanks you to both of you for your representation. Hearing what other students at other schools are reporting is very important, and recognizing our teachers by their own students is very exciting. So it's a very strong statement that I think we've made under Dr. Campbell's leadership. But I think it really reflects on what has happened in the last month, but particularly last week. I was a student of the 60s, I hate to say, but I was. And so I lived through a movement. I saw a very powerful movement, and I participated, and I marched, and I did all those things. And it had an impact on my entire life. And what I see today, which I think is even more exciting, is the fact that there is now a connection between voice and voting. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that I think has been the weakness of our younger voters is not seeing why. How is this important? And I think if there's anything that occurred because of the marches, it was understanding the value of voting. And to me, if we don't have a population that votes, we don't have a democracy. And so I congratulate all of you for that tremendous work. I will say one thing. We had better songs, so you've got a little work to do. Thank you.
Director Gregory. You just got done, sorry. Director McAnally.
So on March 15th, we tried something that I had encouraged, that our ledge reps don't come together. So the legislative representatives that are part of the School Board Directors Association, I asked that we start looking at our director area meetings to bring them together. So 8 of our 20 reps for District Area 2 came together. We discussed what the cycle is and how that process works, and also it was the opening day of submitting proposals for the next year. which will close April 30th, and how to do that with your board and walk through that process. And afterwards, we asked, what did they think? And they said, absolutely, we have to continue to do this. So I think it was a great impact, and we'll move forward with that. After that meeting, there were 40 school board members that met across, again, District Area 2, which is the 20 school districts in King County, and had some pretty powerful conversations around levies and bonds and the passages of those, as well as school safety, and safety not only with what we've heard over the last month, but safety looking at suicide and suicide numbers. And our OSPI superintendent, Mr. Reichdahl, shared that we have 2 students a week in our school districts in the state of Washington that die from suicide. And so when you add that up and determine it, it's a pretty staggering number that we have within this state, and we need to begin to figure out how to identify that and look at it and how we can help that situation as well. So it's a pretty powerful conversation. Everybody, they say, don't talk to us, and we tried to make sure that that's how we did it this time, and they left feeling like that they were fed and had things to take back to their individual boards, so that was good news. On March 24th, I marched with about 300 participants in Federal Way for the March Peace, led by our scholars. It was actually born out of the BSA, Black Student Association, and the Fuentes organization in Federal Way High School. And so 300 of us marched from Federal Way High School to Town Square Park, and it was just phenomenal to see the power of youth in action and what they could do. And then as you watch what happened over the nation, it really is driven by student voice and scholars standing up to say no more, and that it's time for change. And so it's pretty powerful, and we encourage them to continue the work. It doesn't end today. It has to continue to move forward. So think about how you can do that, and so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. Lastly, on March 31st, again, Washington School Directors, the Policy Governance Boards, there'll be a summit in Lacey. And I think there are 12 or 13 boards currently coming together. We're one of the board representatives that will be there to discuss how things are different in a policy governance world and districts, and discuss how that works, and try to get WASDA more on board to support us. We'll share our pieces and what we see, our assessments, and how the things we do and how it is different from other boards within the state. But I think actually, when we look at our state board, there are actually 7 of the 16 of us that sit on that board that are policy governance boards, so more and more moving in that direction, and so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. Thank you.
Director Etto.
Given the fact that we're going to be reporting on ends 3, each scholar will be empowered to take responsibility for his or her academic success and exhibit positive ethical behaviors, treating others with dignity and respect. At the work study last time, I was going by memory, and so I checked the data from last year, and it had to do with the discrepancy between parents who believe their child is safe and what the students were reporting. And there is a 20% gap from last year. Parents in the 80s, 80%, and the scholars, not only the scholars, but also the staff were reporting 20% lower that either the child feels safe or it's a safe place. And I wondered and I was concerned that that gap was an indication of bullying that's going on in our schools that the parent is not aware of, because the parent is not talking to the child's not talking to the parent. And so I think it's worth looking into why there's such a big gap there. The other thing was in the discrepancies in what we're reporting, and maybe there's a rationale. Last time we were the worst in terms of attendance, and we thought that maybe it was the way we were reporting on tardies and attendance. And this year what we're looking at is not missing school because of discipline, and our numbers are good, but we're not comparing the same thing. So it might be good to understand where we stand relative to attendance and whether there was a reporting issue. The other thing that we had were reports relative to students being either self-managed or organized, and we had to wonder about whether teachers had hidden rules that the students didn't understand, and that needed to close the gap in terms of definitions. And this time we're looking at whether a child feels challenged, and again we were talking about definitions, but we're changing the things that we're looking at, so I think there's a need for closure as to, you know, the data that we saw last year, the rationale that we were thinking might have occurred, and bringing that to a close before we head on to move to other things.
Thank you. I just first want to call board member your attention to things that were in your packet tonight. and a couple of those were updated board schedule and a board meeting schedule, as well as the rotation for good news announcements so you can be ready, and also the schedule of monitoring for our board policies, which we had not done, and now you'll see them scheduled out. So I just want to call your attention to that. Also want to say, I was at, on the 20th, Director Gregory and I were at the city council meeting, and they read a proclamation celebrating Women in Public Office Day. And not only Director Gregory and I, but members of the city council and past elected officials were also there. So it was a nice recognition and a way to say we need more women in public office. Oh, and Representative Reeves was there as well. I also attended the March for Our Lives, not at the school, but I went to Town Square Park, and I am, and still am, and always will be impressed with the presence of the youth in our city. And it was a clear scholar-led operation, and the thing I think that for me was the best was the invitation at the very end by the scholars to allow the adults to speak if they chose to do that, as opposed to the adults taking the floor and then perhaps or not leaving space for the scholar voice. It was huge to me. They were very respectful and very planful in what they did. They also did a moment of silence and let off 17 orange balloons to represent the young people's lives that were recently lost in the latest event. And young people were marching for safety, and not just for gun safety. They were marching for safety in their schools. And safety can be defined in a lot of different ways. Bullying, issues related to sexual orientation, all of those things our scholars are impacted by and can really fit under this large umbrella, and I don't want that to be lost. I also know that this is only step one, and we can come together, but there's things that we have to do after that. And as Director Gregory said, there's this thing called democracy, and we have to practice it. So step one would be, for you young people, House Bill 1513 was just passed, and that is the pre-registration to vote for 16 and 17-year-olds, which will make it simpler to have access to the ballot once you're 18. There's also in that House bill opportunity for voter sign-up events for young people connected to their schools and to their schooling, which I would love to see our young people take leadership on. Step two is, once you pre-register and you turn 18, you get this thing called a ballot in your mail. And the step two is you actually have to fill it out and send it in. Because what we know, especially in our area here, is we have very low voter turnout. And in Washington State, just 25% of the 18-year-olds were registered to vote in 2017. And just 25% of those 25% that were registered actually voted. Those numbers go up, obviously, in a presidential election. More people vote than in a special election, but nonetheless, they're all important. And I just want to say, think about this. If 100% of the 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds voted, were registered to vote and actually voted, your influence would be dramatic in how our world has and will change. And you can make a difference in the issues that are important to you by using your voice and using your vote. Incredibly important. You can't just talk about it, you actually have to do it. The other I will share is on the 26th, I had a school visit at Thomas Jefferson and had an opportunity to visit Spanish class, robotics class, chemistry, and a ProStart class, which is their vocational foods class. And you will be happy to know they were busy baking cookies for tomorrow's STEM event, and they each had to have at least 4 dozen baked before they left class that day. So the room smelled wonderful, and I know the cookies are going to taste great. Just another reason to come tomorrow night. And I think that's all I want to say, but I do want to say I can't tell you how proud I am of the scholars in our district and around our country, and not just in our area, but they are the reason. And just like Director Gregory, when I was in 9th grade, I stepped out the windows of my junior high and marched on the express lanes for the Vietnam War. And nobody told me I could, and nobody told me I couldn't. And there was no conversation like we've had about how important that is. It was just something that as young people we felt like we needed to do. And it was worth getting in trouble for because it was so important. And I don't think what young people are doing today is any different than that they are our future, and we've not done them justice or done them duty. And so it's time for them to take the reins. And that's what they're doing, and I'm very proud.
Really quickly, if I could say something. I really just want to echo all of your guys' sentiments about having students really realize the importance of voting. Like, if we can do anything in the principal or the superintendent's advisory committee on like trying to get students engaged in voting, I really think that that's something that would interest a lot of people on that committee, because students always, from freshman year or even from middle school really, they don't believe that schools are preparing them for what life after school is going to be like. And voting is seriously a huge part of that. Like, there's a lot of kids, even like seniors that I know, who don't know that midterm elections exist. And I think that something in advisories or something just in classes in general, just maybe 10, 20 minutes throughout the years, especially for students coming up through here, if we were to build like a small program or just a little bit of, or add something to the curriculum where we teach students about voting, and especially with how the pre-registration, I think that's huge. And it's really going to help a lot of kids actually like start to understand, like, oh, this is something I can do. Because like even I missed the registration for my birthday. I was got a little distracted. So, but yeah, seriously, I want to echo this sentiment.
So hold on to that idea, and we come back together. Let's see what we can actually do. We're about acting. Okay.
One thing is I was sharing with Kobe, we have an organization that's interested in reaching out and trying to figure out how they can support youth in that, which is critically important. And I think you're not alone. Sometimes when you forget as adults, we forget too. So I think it is important, and we will continue to support our advisory in any way we can in making sure that happens. So thank you so much. All righty, Dr. Campbell, ENS 3.
So, Director Eto, thank you for your comments. I want to, as Dr. Pfeiffer heads down with ENS 3, I want to share with you, as we were thinking of this particular presentation, we were struggling with this 1%, 2%, because we felt like it was so not strategic. It didn't really tell anything. And I think the last presentation at the work study was our first shot at trying to get you clear. So we didn't change the metrics. What we were trying to tweak is how we were sharing it so you can see progress. And what I feel fortunate about is having a board who is so nuanced and understands how to ask the right questions that'll sharpen it. I think when you see tonight's presentation, you're going to see us sharpening it a little bit. In response to what you said, I know that we probably missed the mark in integrating what was in your packet and drawing those lines a little bit tighter. And when Dr. Pfeiffer does this presentation, I think you're going to see some of that. But I also think it's probably one or two more iterations out before we nail it. But our goal is to get better. I want to thank you for your feedback. It really has been helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Good evening, Board President Wilson, members of the board, and of course, Dr. Campbell. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide the interpretation and the evidence of ENS 3 reflective of the 2016-17 school year. In review, ENS 3 is that each scholar will take responsibility for his or her academic success and exhibit positive ethical behaviors, treating others with dignity and respect. ENS 3 has two dimensions, as you recall from Conley's 4 factors of college readiness. Sub-End 1 and 2 emphasize academic behavior. Sub-End 3 emphasizes personal responsibility and citizenship that leads to the academic achievement. And this includes contextual skills and awareness, as well as academic behaviors. And students need to experience success through engagement and motivational factors. In selecting the data that will inform ENS 3, research indicates that selected data draw on student grades for non-academic factors, attendance, discipline, and motivation and engagement. During the 2017-18 school year, we have continued to establish as well as collect data while using the 2016-17 results to benchmark against. in measuring our targets towards achieving ENS3 progress. Each measure of progress in tonight's presentation will be rated. As we review the data, you'll notice we are reviewing 15-16 and 16-17 data in order for you to see the progress we're making district-wide. As we triangulate data to national or state standards, our regional districts, and our out-of-district metrics, we will use the same indicators that are used for our school's report cards to determine our level of progress.
So I want to just really draw your attention. If you were to go to any of our school websites, you would see their school report card focused on our goals and our strategic plan, and we rate them using this metric. So this is new. What we wanted to do was to start to use this same metric that our schools are using when we present data for My Ends reports, which we think ties that together. So as opposed to saying 1% down, we're trying to come up with what we call a growth mindset that says, even if we're emerging, we should be moving towards developing. If we're developing, we're going to be moving towards achievement versus a 1%, which tells you nothing. So that's what this is doing.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. I appreciate that addition. Throughout this presentation, for each measure of progress, we will note what our current level of progress is. So excelling will indicate that we have progressed on the measure according to our district goals, as well as compared to other districts in the region, the state, and our nation. And achieving will indicate that we have progressed either against our district goals or as compared to other districts, but not both. And developing, that we are making progress but have not yet made our district goals and or are not competitive with our comparable districts. And then finally, emerging will indicate that we are not making progress on the measure and are also lagging behind other districts.
So if you freeze, if you hear us say merging, we're comparing ourselves to the region, but clearly we're not on par. And so that attendance piece that you mentioned, Hiroshi, that's where you would be hearing us talk about emerging. That's where these descriptors can actually help us to quantify it better. We just got to get used to it, I think.
So for ENS3, we will review the measure of progress in goals 2 and 3, and we'll focus first on goal 2 to highlight progress, measures of progress towards ENS3. And goal 2 measures of progress include our power metrics, specific measures of progress to attendance, to discipline, student-led conferences, non-academic behaviors on standards-based report cards, as well as safe and welcoming environments. The first measure of progress that we're going to look at is our percent of scholars participating in at least 95% of classroom instructional time. To measure our progress, we will review the percent of scholars who are participating in at least 95% of classroom instructional time and the percent of scholars that have not missed instructional time due to discipline. This includes short-term suspensions, long-term suspensions, in-school suspensions, and expulsions. The first data set we will review is the percent of scholars participating in at least 95% of instructional time. Both excused and unexcused absences are included in this metric. It's important to note that this is not the same as a daily attendance rate. A scholar's attendance percentage is how many days a scholar attends school out of the number of days they have been enrolled in our district during the given school year. So our district measure of progress indicates a goal of 95% or higher attendance. For this metric, 11 out of 12 subgroups have stayed steady or improved their rates over the past 2 years. These subgroups include each of our racial and ethnic subgroups, as well as scholars receiving ELL and special education services, free reduced meals eligible students, and female and male subgroups. The Pacific Islander group was the only subgroup that decreased. The bar graph shows that we have stayed steady or flat on this measure to date. Please note our district goal of 95% attendance is more rigorous than the state's metric. The state measures chronic absences, defined as students with an attendance rate of 90% or less, or missing 18 days of school. In Federal Way, 8 out of 10 scholars attend at least 90% of classroom instructional time. Moving forward, we are continuing with our attendance improvement initiatives, which include increased communications with families, such as our daily C5I messages, attendance teams at the school levels, proactive communication and prevention, and also our Community Truants Board. The next metric is the percent of scholars not missing instructional time due to a disciplinary action. These actions include in-school suspension, short-term suspension, long-term, and expulsion. Overall, we've maintained a high rate of 19 out of 20 of our scholars not missing class due to disciplinary actions. In analyzing their subgroup data further, we see that 11 out of 12 subgroups have stayed steady or improved over the past 2 years. The white subgroup was the only subgroup that decreased. The bar graph shows that there was a slight improvement. We're continuing our work in this area with an increased focus on PBIS, or Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports, and ongoing training of our behavior specialists. There'll be additional follow-up information at the end of this presentation relative to next steps. In looking at how we compare to the state and region for this metric, our district metric is more rigorous than the state's. Our district data includes in-school suspensions, but the data for the state and the regional comparisons do not. This data set shows the percent of scholars who did not miss instructional time due to a suspension or an expulsion compared to the roadmap region and our state. Federal Way Public Schools data has been adjusted to remove in-school suspension for a more accurate comparison to the state and our regional partners. Over the past 2 years, the Federal Way Public School rate was 96.1% compared to the 96.4% state average, shown by the line. We have similar rates to the other districts within the roadmap region. Overall, 19 out of 20 scholars in Federal Way Public Schools have not missed instructional time due to discipline. Overall, we're achieving on this metric since we are performing well compared to our state and region, but we still have room to growth towards our more rigorous goal of 95% attendance.
So I just want to pause. Now imagine, the old way we would have shown you, we would have said we've gone up 1%. Do you see how much clearer this is? This gives you, we're looking at it in terms of how we're doing with the region. We're looking at that 1 out of 20 that Mutiu did with our strategic plan. And I know that was a bumpy transition to this, but I think you're going to have greater clarity around our progress using these types of data displays.
Just a question on that. Does that mean that we all are measuring exactly the same?
In this last slide, yes. So what happened here is that we backed out our in-school suspension data, so we're comparing apples to apples. But our rate of attendance rate that we've set in our measures of progress is 95%. But for here, yes, apples to apples.
So things like illness?
Those are excused, yes.
Those are excused, and are they excused in all of the roadmap districts?
Yes, they are.
Okay,
That's
so that-
required by law.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Gregory. Yes. All right, let me see. All right.
So do you want to explain the achievement, so just so they see what we did on the bottom?
Oh, yes.
I just want to go slow. I've learned my lesson. I'm sure they're getting it.
So we're achieving at this because
So-
when we're compared to our region,
No, just the first time.
She just said we were slow.
Okay, well, if we're going to get our clarity, going back to last year, what the data showed was there was a 9% gap in terms of our students being chronically absent, and we were highest in the region, but with Seattle, we had a 9% gap, which was significant. So are we saying now that we're pretty comparable to everybody, including Seattle, or are we talking a different metric?
no, we are comparable.
Okay.
When
that's
we're
good.
talking about our discipline and in school and out, yes, we're comparable.
And what I heard you say was perhaps the difference was you backed out data on this one that was not backed out last year, which then allowed us to look at apples and apples, where last year it was apples and oranges.
Yes.
So we
because-
were counting in-school suspensions in our data last year, and the numbers we're looking at this year, we backed that out, so
we
everybody,
did.
we're looking at
In
the
this
same.
data set, it
Okay.
indicates that, yes. And you can see we're well within our range in our region.
And this is specific to discipline. Overall attendance, we still have a lot of work to do.
We do.
But we're slicing areas to really focus on. And for us to be here with discipline, we were not there a couple of years ago.
I also have to call out, as we look at the work we've done over the last 2 years, right? So we begin to wonder, are we making a difference in achievement gaps? Are we making a difference with discipline? For the only increase to happen in the white subgroup, it's obvious to me that we're having an impact with the work that we're doing around racial equity. So thank you.
Thank you.
And our goal is to not have any of those babies down there, but yeah. Yeah.
That's right. The next measure of progress that we will look at is the percent of scholars and families participating in scholar-led conferences. And to measure our progress, we'll review the percent of scholars and families participating, and the data reflects attendance as of our fall SLCs. Okay. So this data set reflects fall scholar-led conferences attendance for the past 2 years, district-wide. 19 of 20 scholars and their families attended SLCs. SLC attendance increased district-wide, and every subgroup increased. Looking at the subgroups from the lowest to the highest SLC attendance from 2016-17, it's encouraging really to see our gap closing while every group improved. And looking closer,
This is a better picture. Remember that other one was all smushed together, so we expanded it.
looking closer, we see each of the subgroups' improvements, and the gap between the lowest and the highest subgroup decreased from 12% in 2015-16 to 5% in 2016-17. This is a 7% improvement. It is also noteworthy that our ELL subgroup now has the highest SLC attendance rate. The communications effort at the district and school levels are definitely making an impact. The bar graph shows our district-wide growth from 15-16 to 16-17. Our LIOs will continue to work with principals to ensure communication with families encourages and values their participation in quality scholar-led conferences.
Can I just say that I just want to thank you so much and the leadership for working on this, because I know it's been a question and a concern for our ELL families for a long time, and I know with the home language campaign and their concerns about two-way communication and their want to be engaged and involved, that this shows that that work is happening. And I know as I walk through our community, I'm hearing from many of our second language families how excited they are about that ability and the support they get when they come to the school to support their young scholars. So thanks so much.
So overall, we are excelling on this measure of progress since all subgroups improved, and we're closing our gaps.
I want us to get 100% or 95 to 90, 95 better on Parent View. When we start to get those numbers, we're not there yet. So although it's not a part of the direct metric, you're going to hear me talking about that, and I want to be, on the next report next year, I want to give the board the participation rates of Parent View as a strategy, because it's not the metric.
Can I ask a question? One of the notes I wrote down was, where would a parent go, if anyone's listening, who A, may have forgotten how they access it, and B, don't know what their password might be? Who might we share with a parent right now if they were having, wanting to get
Their
access
school,
to Parent View?
Just reach out to their
Their
school.
secretary at their school,
Office
their
managers.
teacher, anybody in the office?
Any
So-
and everybody at the school. How
Okay,
do I
so
get on
wherever
Parent
their
View?
child attends, they could get a hold of someone that they knew there and find out about getting access to Parent View?
Yep.
Because I think, I know myself, my password changes sometimes, and I don't remember it, and also, if I don't ask the first time, I may not ever ask again. So I think we just have to keep providing
agree.
opportunities for that, and I appreciate that. Thanks.
I just have a wonder around that. So on my home computer, I can access it, but I didn't set it up as the app on my phone, and I don't remember it. And the other half in the household doesn't know either.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, that was 3 years ago, if we shouldn't just do a blanket send out again of all username and password information to all of our parents. to
Okay,
help
we'll
them.
talk about that as a team. We're making a video on Parent View that's going to be on the website to show them how. So this can be something that we'll talk about. Our team will talk
We're
about it.
definitely ones that haven't accessed it, because my other half never has. So-
Got it. Okay, we'll take that under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we will review the percent of scholars meeting expectations on non-academic behaviors on standards-based grading report card, specifically 4 areas: actively participates in learning, respects others, completes works, and uses good organizational skills. Please note that these are currently only available at the K-5 report card. However, non-academic behaviors on standards-based report cards is currently under development with our standards-based grading and reporting team.
Soon we'll have it for secondary as well.
We currently define non-academic behaviors as learning behaviors aligned to Connolly's success factors. And these behaviors at the elementary level include respect for others, actively participates in learning, completes work, and uses good organizational skills. excuse me. This data set shows K-5 scholars who met standard in non-academic behaviors. On average, K-5 scholars are meeting expectations in non-academic behaviors at the following rates. Actively participates in learning, 16 out of 20 scholars. Respects others, 18 out of 20 scholars. Completes work, 16 out of 20 scholars. Uses good organizational skills, 16 out of 20 scholars. The bar graph shows that we have remained steady, and we are currently working with our standards-based grading and reporting committee to incorporate non-academic behaviors into the standards grading report card K through 12. To analyze the data further, this data set shows the percent of kindergartners through 5th grade scholars who met standard on all 4 non-academic behaviors. For the past 2 years, 16 out of 20 scholars have met expectations in all 4 domains. The non-academic behaviors are reported on a scale of 1 through 4 on the standards-based report card. A 3 means the scholar met expectation, and 4 means the scholar exceeded the expectation. The average of all 4 of social-emotional learning domains are shown here.
It's one thing we should be thinking about when we hear rumors about how schools are unsafe. This is how teachers are rating scholar behavior. And when you see these numbers, I think this is another data point to say, here's how our own teachers are self-assessing scholar behavior as it relates to those things that are those non-academic behaviors. I think that's another thing we need to be thinking about, how to message that out.
So if that's confirming that these are assessments made by the teacher, that goes back to the idea discussed last year that there was hidden rules involved, or that there were maybe cultural biases. You know, if a child
Absolutely.
comes in with the empty drum makes the most noise and is quiet, and the teacher's expecting the kid always to be asking questions, then, you know, there's a disconnect. So is there a definitional issue, or is there a pretty consistent practice that allows this to be?
So when we roll
Good.
out our handbooks, we're going to define these behaviors. So, you know, the pilot that's happening with standards-based grading and reporting, in that pilot, there will be handbooks that will actually describe criteria for this that'll help the parents and the scholars to know. So it's not so, what I call hidden and judgmental, where you don't have a clear view of what the success criteria look like.
Might I also add on, Dr. Campbell? The Standards-Based Grading and Reporting Committee is really attending to creating culturally responsive rubrics, and we have used not only the research that indicates as such, but gotten feedback from our stakeholders, such as our students, our parents, as
Awesome.
well as the committee itself.
you, Dr. Pfeiffer.
You're welcome.
So, Director Eto, you're asking the right question. We know in some ways how this happens is the beginning. This is the cradle of the school to prison pipeline if we don't address it. And so our committee knows it, and they're working on it, and when you see this, the rollout of these products, you should see us addressing this. But we're taking our time to be sure it's vetted properly.
And the more early learning we have, and the more we do that early on, the less we see this as the pipeline goes along. So I think, again, it just continues to speak to providing services and supports early and often.
So overall, 80% of our elementary scholars are meeting expectations. But we must ask ourselves, are cultural differences playing a part in how we see behaviors across racial and ethnic groups? And so our scholars will believe what we believe about them. It is essential that we pay attention to how we communicate to our scholars about behavior. Let's look again at the K-5 report card data for these non-academic standards, this time by racial and ethnic group. Using the framework of 20 elementary scholars, 16 are meeting or exceeding behavior expectations overall, 13 out of 20 American Indian scholars and 14 out of 20 Black scholars get a score of 3 or 4 on their report card for these standards. While we are achieving on this measure of progress overall, we must continue to challenge our thinking about these disparities. To push our practice, the Office of Equity has increased efforts around our social emotional standards, including the addition of a social emotional learning facilitator to the team, increased professional learning and development around racial, culturally and racially responsive instruction. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, the standards-based grading and reporting team is developing culturally responsive rubrics.
And we're also in the early stages of creating a racial equity policy
right.
district-wide.
That's right.
We'll be sharing that with the board this summer.
That's right. Thank you, Dr. Campbell.
The other thing I will tell you, we convened a group of college admissions officers, and I know Sammy Anderson, who is our graduate, our
Director of College and Career
Thank you.
Readiness.
All of those things. And we asked our admissions officers from all of these local universities, what do you think about our standards-based grading and reporting stance, our products? And they were very supportive. They saw what we're doing. So if you hear from anyone who wonders if their scholars are going to be put at a disadvantage, what did they say to that, Sammy?
They're in absolute support of reporting
Accurately.
and separating it from behaviors and being accurate.
We convened them. How long ago was this? 2 weeks ago?
About-
2 weeks ago. So just so you know, we're doing our homework on that front too. We got video of that, right?
Yes, no, it's our 2-year, 4-year technical colleges.
All of them. We're going to have them on video, so when parents wonder a couple years from now, we're going to say, here's what they told us. Continue.
All right. So for our next measure of progress, we will review the percent of scholars who answered almost always true or often true when asked questions about feeling safe and welcome in their schools, measured by our CEE survey. This data set reflects scholar responses to questions regarding feeling safe and welcome at our school. Looking at the overall averages of our 16, 17, and 17, 18 CEE perception survey data, we see that 14 out of 20 scholars feel safe at school and 13 out of 20 scholars feel welcome at school. In evaluating the subgroup data, we see that 9 out of 12 subgroups have stayed steady or improved in their percent of scholars feeling safe, and 3 subgroups that decreased were multiracial, white, and male. The bar graph shows that there was a slight decline in scholars feeling safe and welcome. Overall, we are developing on this measure of progress.
This is an area of focus. We are going to be talking to the board about adding behavior specialists across the district. We're going to be doing training in this area. We will have a full response to start to address this, not for this presentation today, but want you to know we are paying attention to these numbers and we want to see this improve.
I'm wondering if there's been any thought about, we have home to school, school to home connection, and so if we work on this and we have behavior folks in our schools, how are we making a tie so there's some connection between what's happening at home and what's happening at school and what's happening at school and what's happening at home? And that I think when I talk to parents, especially with young people, 5th grade, 6th, 7th, and up, behavior and discipline is really oftentimes a struggle for them, and I'm just wondering how we might think about doing some partnering and support around if we're talking about this inside classrooms and what we're expecting of our staff, and it might be some new ways of learning. If there's ways we can also share that information with families so that we've got, just like from class to class, what's right and what's rude, kids need to know. And as much as we can make those connections between school and home to school, so parents can also support what's expected, is helpful. And I think the information you're talking about sharing with families, as far as definitions and things, will be helpful, but also resources of where people go to get help.
Thank you.
Question. I just have a quick question, make sure I'm understanding. If a parent is looking at this, I'm on page 10, I'm on the one just below what you've got up there.
She hasn't
Next
made it there
slide.
yet.
Yeah, but here's what my question. Is there a place a parent can go to find out what the measurements are now, or is that coming in the guides?
You mean for the report cards? Because what we were
I
talking.
mean, when you say 7 out of 80, 38 schools perform considerably above the district average, what's that criteria? Is that written down someplace for parents?
So some of this isn't for parents. Some of this is just for you, and some of the information that are on their strategic plan goals are on the school website. Those metrics
Okay.
we make available to parents.
Okay.
Some of this really is about ends interpretations for you, and it's not for parents.
Okay.
Yeah, great question.
Since we are developing at the developing level regarding our Scholars Survey results, we're going to probe a little bit deeper into our data to see where there are successes that we can learn from. For example, on this graph, each of the dots represents one of our schools and their percentage of scholars who said they feel safe at school. The dashed light orange line shows our district average. That is the one that is in the middle. The green line shows performance that is considerably above our average, and the dark orange line shows performance that is considerably below our district average. 22 out of our 38 schools are performing at or above the district average. And there are 7 schools performing considerably above the district average, including 5 elementary schools and 2 academies. The high schools and academies are highlighted in purple. And our LIOs will work with the highest performing schools so that we can learn from them to inform our next steps to support those who might need it. And we will share additional next steps at the end of this presentation relative to this. Next, we'll focus on Goal 3 to highlight measures of progress that inform ENDS 3. Percent of scholars engaged in at least one extracurricular activity, and the percent of scholars that are engaged and challenged as measured by the perception survey. Please note, as we're working how to effectively capture our data for the other 2 measures of progress, our capstone projects and the staff proficiency with student engagement. So let's start with the percent of scholars who are engaged in at least one extracurricular activity. We're specifically reviewing 2016-17 athletic participation, and we define participation in athletics as those scholars involved in both cut and non-cut sports teams across the district at high school and middle school level. And the scholars that are cut from cut sports are not counted in the number. Okay. We define a team using WIAA definitions. Minimum number of participants required for individual sports to qualify for a team. And this number varies from sport to sport, and that's defined by WIAA as well. This data set reflects the number of scholars participating in middle school and high school athletics in 2016-17 school year. We are now using a system called Rank 1 Sports so that the 2016-17 data will be our baseline participation data. In analyzing our subgroup data, we see that our female and male participation rates are almost equal. About 5 out of 10 scholars that participate in athletics are female, and about 5 out of 10 that participate in athletics are male. We also see that 6 out of 7 racial ethnic subgroups participates in sports at rates proportional to our district's enrollment demographics. The Hispanic subgroup was the only subgroup that was underrepresented. It's important to note that other athletic programs that are not defined as sports by WIA, like dance team or elementary track, are not included in this data set, and these counts are only what is reported to the state for sports. These numbers are also do not include other extracurricular activities like clubs or honor society. Okay, we're developing systems of collecting that data, and moving forward, we can more accurately.
We should have had that data. I promised you this last year, and we did not get that. We are getting some pushback in terms of workload. So I just want to tell you, I know we should have had it this time, and I want to be transparent with you that we should have. We'll have it next time.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. In terms of expanding our sports offering relative to Title IX efforts include increased offerings for sports for girls. Since 2015-16, we've added the following sports: middle school cross country, high school varsity and JV bowling, high school C-team volleyball, high school soccer, high school JV tennis, and girls bowling was most recently added. Both cut and non-cut sports are represented in participation rates. And we also offer the following additional athletic programs, which are not included in our participation rates, but are important to note: cheer and dance, elementary track, Special Olympics. Overall, we're achieving on this measure of progress. And in 2017-18 school year, we will add JV boys tennis at the high school level, or we did add JV boys tennis at the high school level. And next year, we're going to be adding co-ed soccer at the middle school level due to a grant from King County.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, Dr. Pfeiffer, on
Sure.
the 15-16 sports that were added for girls? There were then also sports that were added for boys, correct?
Not necessarily. Part of the Title IX compliance is that we have, make certain that we are not out of compliance by offering more male sports than we do females. So
but
we
I
have a
recall that
balance.
we added a JV
Yes.
soccer, men's or boys
Boys
soccer
soccer.
at TJ in order to,
And
and in order
JV
to do
boys
that,
tennis.
we added Another woman's?
That's
Okay,
exactly
okay,
right.
Okay.
That's
okay.
exactly right.
All right.
Yeah. And bowling is, the young ladies love bowling. They're bowling machines. Let's see here. To review progress on our next measure, we'll analyze the percent of scholars that reported almost always true or often true when asked a variety of questions regarding feeling engaged and challenged at school as measured by CEE. And this data set reflects scholar responses to questions regarding feeling engaged and challenged, and looking at the overall averages of our 16-17 and 17-18 CEE's perception surveys, we see that 13 out of 20 scholars feel engaged at school, and 15 out of 20 scholars feel challenged at school. In evaluating the subgroup data, we see that 9 out of 12 subgroups have stayed steady or improved in their percent of scholars feeling engaged and challenged, and the 3 subgroups that decreased were American Indian, multiracial, and scholars receiving special education services. The bar graph shows a very small decrease in scholars feeling engaged and challenged, and overall, we're developing for this measure of progress, and moving forward, our implementation of the Guaranteed and Viable Curriculum system-wide will ensure all scholars have access to engaging and challenging coursework. Similar to our Safe and Welcome survey results, we are developing level regarding our scholars survey results. And so for feeling engaged and challenged, we're going to probe a little bit deeper on this data set. Again, each of our dots on this graph represents one of the schools and their percentage of scholars who said they feel challenged. The dashed light orange line shows our district average, and the green line shows performance that is considerably above, and the dark orange line shows performance that is considerably below. 24 out of our 38 schools are performing at or above the district average. There are 6 schools performing considerably above the district average. They are all elementary schools. The high schools and academies are highlighted in purple, and our LIOs will work with the highest performing schools so that we can learn from them to inform our next step to support schools who might need it. This data summary slide shows an at-a-glance summary chart to see how we are progressing on each of the measures that inform the ENDS 3. And, okay, lastly, as the next step to our work, we'll focus on ensuring that all of our schools are safe learning environments. We'll focus specifically on ensuring deep implementation of positive behavior intervention supports in all schools, expanding our behavior specialists and providing district-level professional development, ensuring behavior specialists are housed in schools across the district, intensifying our communication to parents and families about expectations for scholars, and then we'll utilize an expert consultant on strengthening safe learning environments at our schools that need it the most. Thank you.
Any questions from board directors?
I have
Olivia.
a comment. Can I just say something? Dr. Pfeiffer, thank you for that presentation. I just want to thank the district because, like, looking at this presentation, I know a whole bunch of work must have gone into this. And before I was on the board or on the advisory, I didn't really know how much data you guys take or like what work goes into this. And I don't think scholars within our schools realize how much work goes into like their success and how much you guys prepare us for success. So I just want to say thank you to everyone on the district for putting in this much work to help our scholars within our district be successful. So thank you.
That means the world, Olivia, and I really thank you for those kind words, and I would echo that totally. Director Gregory.
I would just say that I think this is a great next step from what we had 2 weeks ago. And, you know, and I know it's a work in progress, so I'm not saying 2 weeks ago wasn't appropriate, because that's where we were. But this is much more understandable, plus it incorporates data a little more that for me derives a comfort level in understanding what these graphs are, and I think that's great. And tell James.
I will.
Poor guy.
And Diane.
And Diana.
Diana.
Oh, Diana.
She's Casabe.
Oh, yeah.
Raise your hand, Diana. So
Thank you.
these are the people working behind the scenes
Yeah.
on this. So.
You can sleep tonight.
Any other board comments? I want to say, Director McAnally.
So I just want to thank the entire team for all the taking into consideration our comments.
Yep.
And where it is, I believe that this is stellar and spot on with where we're doing it. It needs to be, we need to highlight where we're at overall, and the 1-2% differences, I agree, that's not the way to do it, and I believe that what we're measuring each one of our schools on is how we should measure things for Dr. Campbell within the ends, and so it's a shift and a change that sometimes not all of us move with the changes quickly, but what you've incorporated here to have to understanding, thank you.
I just want to say thank you for doing your part, and now it's our time to do our part as a board, and that is we have to create a single voice document as a monitoring response to ENS 3, and I've received only 3 sets of feedback from board directors, so if other 2 board directors who have not been able to complete the SurveyMonkey would do so, that would allow
Thank you,
me to
Dr.
do a
Pfeiffer.
single voice document that represents the entire board and not just a portion of it.
Do you want us to do it over now that we've seen this versus our reaction to the first one?
No, I think that's
'Cause
fine
mine-
if you've,
My view of question 3 is quite different.
if you'd like to think about that and just shoot me an email with
Okay.
your updated thoughts on that one, that would be awesome. Don't feel like you have to redo the survey, though. Just send me any additional comments you might have. Thank you, Director Gregory, that'd be great. Alrighty, again, I just want to thank you for all the work and also doing a revise for us and adding additional data and information on the actual PowerPoint. We had it before behind, but it wasn't included in the PowerPoint, and so it was difficult to kind of go back and forth. So having it all together was very, very helpful. So thank you so much for everyone for presenting and also for getting the data ready. Thank you. All right, with that, we're going to move on with 4.6, which is Resolution 2018-01, authorization of alternate public works contracting method, and I believe we want to do
There's going to be a
presentation first.
First.
Right.
And I'm going to have Executive Director Mike Benzine and Casey Moore to come up. Casey is our project manager for all things related to the bond. They're going to give you a PowerPoint on the GCCM process. They're going to do 2 things in this, so here's what I want you to listen for. What is GCCM? Why are districts like us and around the region moving towards it? And what it is and why it is that we believe this gives us the best path to really having our schools built in a way that is fiscally responsible and in the best interest of the district. Take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, President Wilson, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Campbell. Tonight we'd like to give you the resolution for the GCCM. However, I would like to introduce Casey Moore. He is our new capital projects manager, and Casey has been with us a little over a month, and we are just very excited to have him with us. He brings a wealth of knowledge. He's been in school construction for 30 years. He's a licensed architect, been a project manager, been on the construction side, and been on the owner side. So
And worked at OSPI.
and recently a stint with the OSPI. That's correct. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Casey. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you, Mike, and President Wilson, members of the board, Dr. Campbell. In my short time here, I've learned how challenging it can be to follow Dr. Pfeiffer because she's incredibly organized with great amount of detail. Fortunately, this subject is way simpler. All right, so with that, what we want to present tonight is this alternative method for delivery of projects, construction projects, the first 5 projects of our bond program. And our objective is hopefully to receive your approval to proceed with that. When I say alternative, that means in comparison to a traditional method. So oh, there we go.
There
I have
we
the
go.
slides in front of you here.
Thanks, Mike.
There you go, perfect. Thank you. Go next one more.
There you go.
Okay. So this is in comparison to a traditional method. Traditional method is what we'd refer to as design, bid, build. And our Federal Way High School project is being delivered by that design, bid, build process. GCCM stands for General Contractor Construction Manager. And it's considered alternative because it is complex. It involves a lot of experience in how to execute that process. And it's allowed to be executed as a public works project through RCW 3910. The process has a lot of benefits, which I will go through here in detail, but some of the first parts is it allows for pre-qualification of the general contractor that we want to work with based on our own criteria. And based on that short listing of the general contractors, we come up with a final selection based on our own scoring and evaluation of their fees. And those fees are fees that we experience both during design and construction. And that leads to the next point, is that the general contractor comes on early in the design process. So we're currently at the very beginning phase of our design process, called the schematic design phase. We're just about ready to start on that. And this allows for them to join us in that design process early on. As we move through the development of design, and we get to the aspect of where we're developing construction documents, and at about 90%, the general contractor will guarantee a price that they will construct the project for. And subcontractors who will be doing many aspects of that work will then provide them bids in a traditional process for that work. A real benefit is that once they have guaranteed that price, the contractor will absorb any additional cost beyond what they have committed to. At the same time, if they come under, we get to join or share with them in those savings. So when is GCCM appropriate? I would put it this way. If you have a complex project that involves phasing, and it might be on a site that is occupied by current students and staff, and it might be technical, and maybe if you're doing historic renovation. So of the four, we've got all three. We are on sites that will most likely all be occupied during construction. A couple of them, we're looking at potentially trying to sidestep that issue because they're tight. We know that the phasing and scheduling will be complex, and school projects by their nature are complex. So some of the benefits of GCCM, I think I'd put it to you this way, it's simple. They become our partner from day one, as compared to a traditional process where we bid the project out, we have no idea who's going to show up at the day of bids, and their goal is to defend their contract, and that's understandable. That's the process. In this scenario, they are our partners, and they are our partners from day one, and they are committed to helping us achieve our goals. And that is the part that's very, very important, is that they are our partners. They understand what our strategic goals are, and they know what they can do to help us in managing the schedule, in managing the budget, and you're talking about a site that's occupied. That gives the opportunity for them to execute their work in a manner that is safe for our scholars and for our staff. It also gives them a lot more control over budgeting and scheduling. And it basically eliminates the potential for claims during the construction process, except for conditions that would be exceptionally unforeseen. So when we consider the traditional process, design, bid, build, some of the side effects are, and I'm not sure if you've heard a lot about where our economy is these days in construction, but we are faced with extraordinary escalation scenarios today that is similar to where we were at prior to the recession. So the challenge that we have is if we put these projects out for a typical design, bid, build process, we have no idea who will show up, whether they will be qualified, that they may protest the bids if somebody didn't get it. And their objective is to defend their contract, as I said. So they will be looking for mistakes in the drawings rather than working as partners with us in helping to eliminate issues that will come up. They will be looking for opportunities to cut corners, which doesn't necessarily benefit us as a district. We'll likely see a lot more change orders in the design bid process, which is what we're seeing in Federal Way High School. And there's nothing exceptional about that situation. We've run into some unforeseen conditions, but that is the nature of that scenario. And there's an added benefit that we have the opportunity to engage firms that are local to this area, which, along with helping the economy and was part of some of the things that we wanted to accomplish with this bond program, it is beneficial to the economy as well. So with that, in the delivery of this process, the process that we have to go through this is the alternative delivery process is monitored by the Capital Projects Advisory Review Board, CPARB, and we use lots of acronyms in my industry, so stay with me. And the entity that is part of CPARB that monitors this application is the Project Review Committee, PRC. And the process that we go through is we submit an application to them for review. It's just like a job interview almost, but they look into a great deal of detail on how we are going to deliver that project. Unfortunately, Federal Way Public Schools doesn't have any experience delivering GCCM, or very little, if any, is my understanding. Fortunately, we are engaged with a project management firm that does, and that firm is CBR Hearing. We actually have several of our project managers here. If you want to raise your hands, there you go. CBR Hearing has been doing this for a long time, and our project managers are very experienced in this. So it's not a matter of whether we're going to be approved. I'm confident we will be approved because we've got the right team to be able to deliver this. And as the last aspect of this is that OSPI, Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, and the grant program that provides funding assistance for schools requires that there's a board resolution allowing us, approving us to move forward, which gets us to tonight. So a resolution is needed by OSPI in order to pursue this approach, and OSPI and CPARB need to see this resolution so that they have assurance that we will comply with RCW 3910. That's it.
All righty. Questions, Director Gregory?
I'm kind of lost in the process.
Okay.
GCCM is, walk me through, what happens first? I know you've done this already, but
Sure.
I'm trying to visualize it. So you have a general contractor as a construction manager. What does that mean?
Okay, so the first step is us deciding that this is a process we're going to go. If we're pending that resolution, then the next step is we present our application to CPARB for their review. The general contractor, in this case, is both the project manager and the contractor. They come on and they're part of our design team. So we go through a process of first being approved to be able to pursue this process. Second, we put out an advertisement asking for solicitation of general contractors who'd be interested in working with us.
Okay.
We come up with our own selection criteria, so we're not forced to take the low bidder.
Right, okay.
We then shortlist that, and once we've gone through a short list, we come up with a scoring criteria, and we get to evaluate their fees. All of these things we don't get to do in a typical design bid process.
Okay, and so this is so at the start then, who you select is given us a dollar amount?
They don't commit, they will, so there's two parts to it. There's the amount that they commit to for construction, which we won't get to until we get to close to the end of the design process. There's the amount that they will commit to, which is their fee. So they become our partners, and just like the architects and everybody else, it's taking time for them to assist us. So they have a fee for that, and they also have a fee for construction. So it gives us the chance to actually look at what they're charging as compared to having
For the
no idea.
first fee or the second fee?
Both.
Both at the beginning?
Yes.
And then they'll bid it out?
Correct.
Around that fee?
Correct. So they provide us a fee for their management services, and this is what they're doing.
And do we have one for all our schools? Do we have one for each of our schools, a general contractor?
Yeah, so those are really good questions. And we're in the process of evaluating that. I would say definitely we won't have one for all 5 projects. We're looking at the elementary schools as to how those might benefit. So just to give you an understanding, for each elementary school by itself, they really wouldn't justify a GCCM process. They're too small. But because of the economy, we're in a situation where if we tried to bid out 4 elementary schools in a traditional process, it would be challenging to get 4 qualified bidders, and then we would be potentially dealing with 4 different contractors, which has a level of complexity. So we're considering that the high school will probably be its own project, GCCM. That's a fairly large-sized project. And we're looking at the elementary schools as possibly pairing them up. Right now, we've got 2 projects with 2 different design firms, so that would be a potential pairing. We're also looking that we may put it out as all 4.
Okay.
What we want to do is make it attractive to the contractor so that they have the scale of interest that gets us the pricing we're looking for.
I understand, thank you.
Okay.
Director Eto?
So clearly, the contractor's in business to make money, so there should be no illusion that they're going to come out of their own pocket to cover any costs. If I'm understanding this correctly, it's kind of similar to design build, except they're accepting our designer as the partner, whereas in design build, they would have picked the designer and they would be constructing it, and does tend to lower your claims. So that's what I kind of see as what you're proposing here in this situation.
Well, if you don't mind, let me address that. So an alternative process is design build, which you just mentioned. That process is just starting in the school world. Honestly, OSBI has not even caught up to figure out how to actually deal with it. But there are some firms, my understanding is Issaquah High School, I think, is doing design build. The difference that I would say is this, is that it's not that the contractor gets to select the architect. Actually, we work with the architect. If we were doing design build, we would work with the architect through the initial phase, through schematic design. Then we'd put out a bid for a contractor, and at that point, when we select that contractor, now the architect works for the contractor. The benefit is, at a certain point, they will commit to a price. We describe the project and the idea as to what we want, and the idea is to not have to take the process all the way through the detailed level of documents. It's more of what the contractor needs to be able to support what he's committed to for a price. So that is a potential benefit, but it's not one that we're considering at this point, I think, just because it's not something that's done.
It was just to get an understanding of
Yeah,
the process
sure.
in my mind. So the incentive really is for the contractor to come in with a price that he can make sure that he'll get the subcontractors to be able to make that cost-sharing profit. So there is an incentive here to get a number so that he can come in with a profit. So the concern on my part would be allocating enough money in the entire construction program, because everyone needs to get their share, so that we don't end up at the end having to go back to the public and saying, we need more money to finish this program that we promised you back in 2018. So I guess whoever's allocating those funds is where we're going to really need to look at carefully, because the contractor should make a profit. We don't expect them to lose money. But at the same time, there is an incentive here to be high enough to be able to create that cost sharing. So if we front load it too much, we may end up at the end when all of us are probably gone and not have a good situation. I think we need to avoid that. So allocation at the front, whoever's doing that, probably should talk to the board to kind of give us some indication of what the thought process is.
Yeah, I'm glad to share with you that, and we have done a fairly detailed initial allocation across all the projects, and that sets what I'll call the budgets for the projects. So anything we pursue is going to fit within those budgets. If we run into a situation where it won't, we'll have to have a discussion, but our whole objective is to have this contractor work with us to help us hit those numbers and avoid getting to the end of the project and
That's
saying,
exactly right.
we need additional money.
We've already done what I would call sort of predictions around each project that gives us parameters. But if we don't use this process, what could happen, just like the danger is on the front end, is that on the back end, you're still paying because you have not done some containment. And I think that's what this allows us to do, is contain it so that we don't have so many unexpected things that may come up. But we have already started to think about what are the ceilings for what these projects can cost so we don't run out of money towards the end. But we are up against inflation, which is out of our control right now, I will be honest with you.
And ultimately, we have to approve each one of these. So at the end of the day, we still have to approve them. Right?
Correct. You're correct. That's right. So each project will come in, so although a contractor may be encouraged to bid all 4 elementary schools, they will provide a price for each one of them, and each one has to be approved. That's correct.
And I think just like the other, we had reports all along the way, and if there were unexpected things that came up, I know at Fed High School there was some removal of tanks that was not expected, but I mean, those are the kinds of things that I think having a plan like this is going to keep us
Would have
on
helped
time and
us.
on budget.
It's very helpful because we can engage a contractor to help us do some what's called destructive testing or anticipation of unforeseen conditions, which we don't have that ability in the design build. Who's going to go out and poke holes in the dirt and check to see if the tank is where we thought it was? How do you do that? But with the GCCM, if they understand there might be a tank there, they'll probably say, maybe we should go poke a few holes and see where it is.
Yeah.
And
Incentivizes them.
Director Gregory.
This is playing devil's advocate.
Sure.
Are there any downsides that subcontractors, unions, workers see in this process? Has there been any issues with this process?
Not really, because like I said, the subcontracting process is still handled as it was previously. In a process, they provide bids to the contractor. I would say it probably eliminates some of those problems because the contractor has time to work with them and develop bids. And the contractor is going to be working with subcontractors they're confident in.
Great, thank you.
And I think one of the other benefits that I see out of this is that we try to use local areas and local people in our cities or in our areas to do this work, where when you go design, build, and do it that way, you have no idea of what subcontractors are going to come from where. And so that's part of what, to me, is very appealing, is that these are tax dollars coming from our community or within our community, and we feed it back to the community for them as workers, so.
The general contractor will have the greatest control over selecting local companies, and we have some of the very best GCCM contractors literally in our backyard. As for the subcontractors, that's up to them, but they're likely inclined to work with folks that they know and that are local. It's going to be easier to get the job done, so.
Any other questions?
Just a clarification on that point. So does the state-approved list of contractors only include those operating in our state? Better said, headquartered in our state?
There is no state-approved list.
Oh, I thought
That's-
there was a pre-qualification according to
No,
RCW.
the pre-qualification is what we decide how we pre-qualify it. So I don't think there's any limit. I know on design bid build, there's no reason that somebody from Oregon can't bid this project. I've had that happen.
Okay, the short list is developed by us locally. It's not,
Correct.
it's not a state list.
Correct, that's right.
All right, so, Director McAnally, you have a question? Okay. So I think what we're going to do now is read the resolution, and then I will ask for a motion to accept from the board, and then we can move on to our next item. So Director McAnally?
Resolution number 2018-01, resolution authorizing the use of alternate public work contracting method, general contractor, construction manager, GCCM. Whereas the Federal Way School District will be undertaking projects at Thomas Jefferson High School, Lake Grove, Mirror Lake, Star Lake, and Wildwood Elementary Schools, financed through the November 2017 voter-approved bond. And whereas RCW 39.10.200 authorizes the Federal Way Public Schools to use the GCCM procedure for certain school projects after approval of the Capital Project Advisory Review Board's Project Review Committee. And whereas the RCW 39.10.280 authorizes the GCCM procedure for a specific project after determination that the use of the alternative public works contracting procedure will serve the public interest. Whereas there are compelling reasons for the utilization of alternative construction contracting via the GCCM contracting process. And whereas the use of the GCCM process will serve the public interest because of the use of the traditional lump sum award to the lowest responsible bidder method is not practical to meet the quality standards, design requirements, delivery schedule, construction means and methods, community concerns, student safety, and educational delivery concerns during construction. And whereas it is required by the Federal Way School District Board of Directors approve the use of GCCM contracting for the purposes of obtaining state match funds, now therefore be it resolved that the Federal Way School District Number 210 Board of Directors approve the general contractor construction manager GCCM procedure for the new in lieu replacement projects at Thomas Jefferson High School, Lake Grove, Mirror Lake, Star Lake, and Wildwood Elementary Schools, and that the Board of Directors, in accordance with OSPI provisions in the D5 application, certifies that it will comply with the requirements as defined in RCW 39.10.
I am looking for a motion from a board member.
I move that the Board of Education approve Resolution 2018-01, authorization of alternate public works contracting method, general contractor, construction manager, GCCM, as submitted.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
Any further conversation or question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you, Casey. That was very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking our questions, too. Next, and almost the thing that keeps us between now and going home, is bond sale update. Dr. Campbell.
So I want to tell the board, so you're talking about those beautiful buildings, how we're going to pay for them. Well, we have to sell some bonds. And so what Sally's going to do really tonight is just give you an overview. You're going to have a work study where we're going to explain a little bit more in detail. We just want you to start to prepare yourself for the process. So she's got two slides just to give you the process, and then we'll be coming back at a work study with more detail.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Good evening, President Wilson, members of the board. Since I really don't want to be the reason that I'm in the way between where you are and where you want to go, I do have just 2 slides to share with you. It takes about 3 months to prepare a bond sale, and so this, as Dr. Campbell mentioned, is a preliminary overview to get you thinking about this. And so at the April 24th board meeting, we will be asking you to adopt Board Resolution 2018-02. And in that particular motion, it does 2 major things. It authorizes the school district's participation in the Washington State School Bond Guarantee Program, which is like an insurance for people who want to buy our bonds. It provides credit enhancement and ultimately reduction in borrowing costs, because the better your credit, the lower your interest. And most importantly, it authorizes the sale of the new bonds. This will be the first issue of multiple issues of the $450 million bond authorization approved by the voters in 2017. It will be structured in such a way to maintain and sustain our tax commitments. It initiates funding for the first 5 projects, which you have heard this evening are Thomas Jefferson High School and 4 elementary schools, Lake Grove, Mirror Lake, Wildwood, and Star Lake. Not quite in alphabetical order. It declares that the bonds will be sold competitively. So there are 2 ways to sell bonds to the bond buyer market. One is to negotiate that sale, and the other is to do a sealed competitive bid. And we have historically done sealed competitive bids, as we believe that yields tighter and lower interest rates for our voters. It delegates the authority within defined limits to the superintendent and/or the chief finance and operations officer to accept or reject those bid results within those defined limits. And again, you'll see a timeline on the next slide. Currently, we are scheduled to open competitive bids on June 4th with the timeline that we're working with. Here again lays out sort of the 3 some of the high-level steps that are involved in issuing bonds. Tonight, we're just trying to do a high-level review. Part of marketing your bonds is preparing a preliminary official statement. As Dr. Campbell referenced, we will have a board work study. As part of the board work study on April 17th, we'll provide more detail related to this upcoming bond sale and the options that are under consideration. April 24th is when you'll adopt the resolution. We have rating agency calls. This is the opportunity for Dr. Campbell and her team to talk to Moody's and Standard & Poor's to reaffirm or potentially upgrade our current strong credit ratings. Then we'll go through all the rest of those processes. On June 22nd, based on this current timeline, we will provide the board with a written update as a result of that delegation resolution, so you know what has happened. So again, just quickly, the items left in bold are the specific places where we'll be providing specific information to the board. And that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Director Ito.
Just out of curiosity more than anything else, I take it that your bond rating affects the interest you have to pay?
Correct.
So what sort of things affect our bond rating?
They look at a wide span of activities. Obviously, they look at the strength of your financial statements, and our financial statements continue to be strong. And certainly with the state's influx of McCleary funding, that will help bolster that position. They look at your history with the state auditor's office, and again, we have a strong record of being compliant with the various rules and regulations that school districts are accountable for. They look at the strength of the leadership, and we have a great asset to market in both the superintendent and with the school board. They also are interested in what's happening with our scholars and our scholar outcomes, so it's a great opportunity to talk about the work that we're doing. So I think we're well positioned to certainly retain our credit ratings, and I always make the ask for an increase, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you. I think it's interesting because I always think of them thinking about ratings, about money, not necessarily thinking about the shape of our scholars or the leadership in our district. And I think that that's a nice thing to hear because it really is looking at a full picture. So thanks. That was a great question. So any other questions from board members? Thank you very much, and we will be seeing you again. I know more to come.
Yes.
With that, is there anything else for the good of the order?
Thank you, Sally, nicely done.
All righty, and I am saying we are out of here at 7:55. Thanks so much for spending the evening with us.